Imagine a world where your teacher was barely older than you, where a prank could set off an ink explosion, and where the only school bell that ever rang was in your imagination. This is the story of Fruita's one-room schoolhouse, a relic of Utah's last frontier, where education meant survival and childhood meant hard work, mischief, and of course, adventure. This tiny log structure, nestled beneath the towering Wingate sandstone cliffs, tells us the story of the forgotten chapter in the American Southwest. In the 1890s, America was looking beyond its western frontier, setting its sight on the Pacific and of course beyond. But here, deep in Utah's Capitol Reef, a handful of pioneers were still fighting to carve a life out of the wilderness. They had land, they had farms, but there was one thing missing: a school. In 1896, local settler Elijah Cutler Behunin donated land to build the Fruita Schoolhouse. It was a true community effort. Just 8 families lived here, but they had plenty of children. In fact, Elijah's own daughter, Nettie, became the first teacher at just 12 years old. Yeah, you heard that right, just 12. Before the schoolhouse was built, Nettie taught her students in her own home. Her first class had 22 students, including 3 of her own siblings. And trust me, it wasn't a job for the faint of heart. She had to manage students of all ages in a single room, while barely being older than some of them. And they were all grateful for when the schoolhouse was actually built. The original schoolhouse was built with hand-hewn logs and had a dirt-covered roof. In 1912, a peaked shingled roof was added, but inside, the walls were bare logs, with gaps plugged by whatever the settlers at the time could find. Which, if you know anything about the American West, this is typical practice. It was simple, but for the families of Fruita, it was everything. Life in the Fruita Schoolhouse was nothing like the classrooms of today. The teacher taught all 8 grades at once: reading, writing, arithmetic, and if they were lucky, they might even get a little bit of geography. There was no electricity and no running water. The first desks were handmade, built of rough pine, and sat 2 students each. But these desks weren't just made for sitting. Teachers had a trick up their sleeve for dealing with them troublemakers. If a boy got too rowdy, the teacher would sit him next to a girl. The damage to his ego usually kept him quiet. But just like the classrooms of today, the students weren't always so easy to control. The pranks were legendary. Some hid the teacher's alarm clock in a wood pile to delay class. Others discovered that dropping a bit of calcium carbide borrowed from a lantern into an inkwell made an ink bubble over explosion. And if the inkwell was sealed super well, it would actually explode, splattering ink across the entire room. Yikes. Now let's fast forward to 1934. A new teacher arrived in Fruita.
My name is Janice Olroy Torgerson, and I taught here in 1934 as a brand new teacher. I was a native of Wayne County, but Fruita was a rough 25-mile drive from my parents' home in Lyman. I received $57 a month for a 7-month contract and boarded at Tyne Oiler's home here in Fruita. There was no electricity or indoor plumbing, but Fruita was beautiful. Across the dusty road were row upon row of grapes, bordered by huge walnut trees. On moonlit nights, the majestic red cliffs seemed gentle and protective. The school building was sadly in need of repair, and mud was falling from between the logs. We had only a few old, ragged books. Like many rural children of the day, some of my students were pretty rough and tumble. The language I heard was too rugged for me, and I came down hard on that. Then there were the inevitable tricks. One morning I received a dead snake coiled menacingly on my chair. I gathered some gentle recollections too. I especially remember the happy faces of young Lloyd and Fay Gifford when they gave me a handkerchief at Christmas. It was a pretty rough year for a new teacher, and frankly, I was relieved as school end drew near. The folks at Fruita gave me a surprise party the last evening before I left. The Mulfords and Giffords came with food. We played games and danced in the Oilers' crowded living room. By noon the next day, I was on my way home. Just before Fruita disappeared from view, I stopped, sat down on a rock, and thought about the eventful year just past. I found a lot of happy memories while sitting there, and cried a little, knowing it was over.
The time is now 1941, and at this point, Fruita had changed dramatically. Families moved away, and the schoolhouse fell silent. But its purpose wasn't over yet. It officially transitioned into a meeting house, a dance hall, a church, and a gathering place for elections and community celebrations. Before too long, in 1964, the National Park Service stepped in, restoring the old schoolhouse to its 1930s appearance. And that is the appearance that visitors get to see today. So the next time you pass through Capitol Reef, take a moment, listen. You just might hear the echoes of children reciting their lessons, or the laughter of a student plotting their next great prank. What do you think life was like in this one-room schoolhouse? Have you ever visited the Fruita Schoolhouse? You should let us know down in the comments. And of course, if you love exploring history and all the fascinating stories of the past, you should subscribe for more Timeless Tales. We hoped you enjoyed visiting the Fruita Schoolhouse with us today, but we're out for more adventures, so we'll see you later.